and gentlemen, I'd like to call our meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust, and I welcome you all here and look forward to your participation. We have a full agenda today, so we'll try to move through it as expeditiously as we can. The first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of our last meeting, and they have been distributed to the trustees previously. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes?
I'd like to move approval.
Second. Motion's made and second. Please cast your votes. And the item changed. We need to take Mr. Roth's name off the list. Item 3 on our agenda is the approval of the payments that the trust made this past month, and the claims rather for payments, and they were included in our packet. They are a substantial number of claims. They're all associated with TIF 8. Are there any questions or comments on the claims? We've got experts in the audience who can ask those questions. If you Chair would entertain a motion to ratify the claims. Second. Please cast your votes. And the item is ratified. Okay, very good. Thank you. Item 4 is items for individual consideration, and we have a lot of these this morning, or this afternoon rather, and we'll try to move through them as expeditiously. If you have comments or questions, please try to make them germane to the issue we're discussing, and that these are complicated issues and there's lots of side issues involved, but we need, I think, to get through this, we need to focus in on the main subject under consideration. Item A deals with an agreement with the Myriad Gardens on the building that they purchased. We loaned them money for, and now they want to give the building back to us. It must not have been as good a deal as we thought. Are there any questions or comments? Staff, would you like to make?
I think I'd like to introduce Jim Talbert, who is representing the Myriad Gardens Foundation. He would like to make a brief presentation about this item and give you some of the history and the background related to it.
And I'll try to be brief, Chairman Ryan. 3 years ago, I guess, when we were beginning the intense process of planning the redevelopment of the Myriad Gardens, it became evident that one of the things that had to change was the facilities that were then available for back-of-the-house activities, for dumpsters, for equipment parking, for employee parking, for similar activities, because we were going to redevelop the south end of the Crystal Bridge and make it a major entrance. Similarly, in the course of redeveloping the Crystal Bridge, we have shrunk the amount of office space in the Crystal Bridge. So in considering those plans, the Myriad Gardens Foundation was looking around and actually had identified the Viagraph building as a property that might be interesting to solve these problems. At about the same time, Rick Dunning, who was the owner of the building at that time, approached James Pickle and I to talk about the fact that he wanted the building to be in public use over time. He didn't want it to be sold ultimately to a speculator if he could help it. He would rather it was sold to an entity that would make use of it in connection with the civic development of the area. So we entered into a negotiation with Rick, and over a period of time came to an understanding that he was interested in a deal that was structured around our paying a cash price for the building and established on a value that we were comfortable with, but that he felt the building was worth a great deal more, and he had indication from appraisers that it would be worth a good deal more. So what he would like to do was make a donation to the Myriad Gardens Foundation of the difference between what we thought we could justify paying as an economic price at that moment and what he thought it was really worth. So we entered into an agreement along those lines. We arranged with this trust to finance that purchase because the facility was going to be used for the advancement of the Myriad Gardens. It was being handled by the foundation primarily because it facilitated the transaction for us to be the acquirer. So we acquired the property in August of 2010. I want to be sure I was precise about that. Paying $4.2 million in cash and taking a major contribution of the balance of the value that Mr. Dunning felt the building contained as a donation to the foundation. we entered into an agreement with the trust to borrow the money with the understanding that the income, the payment of interest to the trust would be entirely dependent on the income of the property. The property continues to have income because Mr. Dunning has retained his offices and had an ongoing lease in the building. There are a couple of other small tenants that have similar leases. And then the adjacent property, which is the Mexican restaurant, has an ongoing lease, which provides income to the property. The property consists now of the Vitagraph building, which is a 2-story finished office building, a nice office building, a garage next door, which is a 1-story covered structure, and adjacent to that to the Mexican restaurant, which is also about 50 feet wide, and then 6 lots to the west of that are used as parking lots. As time went on, we were at almost about the time we finished acquiring the property, we began to seriously consider the possibility that it might be useful for the Myriad Gardens Foundation to become the operator and the lessee and operator of the gardens. And so that fall, we began a series of negotiations with the city to arrive at an agreement that you approved in May of this year, which provides for the foundation to operate and maintain the gardens in partnership with the city. And as part of that agreement, we plan to include the building by deeding it back to the trust and incorporating it into that lease and management agreement. At the time that was proposed, there was concern expressed about the fact that there was accrued interest that had developed on the property because our ability to pay interest was strictly dependent on the cash flow from the property, and it was insufficient. So a accrued interest number had built up, and there was concern expressed that something needed to be addressed about that interest, even though, in our opinion, we're only an obligation based on the asset, and should we transfer the asset, we shouldn't have a future obligation. But nonetheless, we agreed that this needed to be dealt with, and so we're here today to propose that we deed the building back to the trust, and that we enter into a promissory note to repay the existing balance of the interest, which is about $180,000, out of the future cash flow of the property. That, I think, is as succinctly describes as what we're proposing as anything. In every other respect, it's exactly as we proposed in May.
Thank you, Jim. Are there questions, Mr. Talbert? Yeah, Larry?
Well, I don't have a question to Jim, but I notice, is this going to be covered later, Kathy? What is the...
We can cover that right now. What Mr. McAtee is referring to is a letter that we've received from Michael Stacy that's addressed to Wiley Williams that states that the property is worth at least the $4.2 million that it was worth in September 2010, and actually is probably worth substantially more than that because of the recent decision of the City Council to locate the convention center, the new convention center, across the street from the property. So this is to update the appraisal information that we received in September, and that's why this has been provided to you today as a part of this transaction.
Okay, now, a question was asked of me, and I shared it with you, Kathy, before the meeting, that there was a possibility that Leslie had asked for, or articulated that there would be another appraisal done before this deal was closed. Does this take that place, or was that a misunderstanding of the quote? I don't remember the quote myself. I'm trying to gather some information for somebody who asked me that.
Leslie or Wiley can give you the precise language in the agreement, but if this letter can be deemed to be a sufficient appraisal of the property.
Yes, I'm Leslie Batchelor. I represent the Myriad Gardens Foundation. And if I recall correctly what I said at the time, it was to identify that a condition of closing on this transaction in the real estate transfer agreement is that there be an appraisal that's acceptable to this trust before you have any obligation to close. So this is a precondition of closing the transaction, but it's solely within the discretion of the trust whether this letter and the other information you have meets to your satisfaction or not.
So if this were to meet to my satisfaction, then your statement has been fulfilled with this particular document right here.
That's correct.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Larry, do you have any? Oh, excuse me.
If we did not deed the building back to the trust, and the property, as has been suggested, increases in value, and there is further interest in a development of that block, then the foundation would be the beneficiary of that increase in value. Under this arrangement, we are giving that up, and it would be the trust who would be the beneficiary of that.
Thank you. Larry, is that, you consider that letter, it's slightly less than a full appraisal, I'll agree, but it does cover the point that the building's worth at least as much as was purchased.
From my standpoint as a non-legal person, it does. Let me ask Wiley, does this satisfy, from a legal standpoint, in your opinion, what we're talking about?
Yes, because we based our loan that the trust made on the prior record, or the prior appraisal made by Mr. Stacy, and this is just an update of that to be sure that nothing has happened in the interim to lessen the value of that property.
Thank you.
Any questions? Wally, would you like to say anything about the documents attached to this? It was not a simple transaction. There's lots of pieces to it.
Right, there are a lot of different pieces to it, but essentially it is the agreement that the foundation has agreed to pay back the $180,000 plus in interest payments, and then there's a transfer of deed, and there's also an obligation that we are releasing the prior mortgage and promissory note in exchange for all these documents.
But the net is the same. We get the building back and the loan is expired.
That's right. But a new loan is created, or a new note is created.
For the interest.
Correct.
Very good, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? The chair needs a motion to accept the resolution, and we become owners of the building, and free and clear.
Well, from a business perspective, and I appreciate John Michael Williams and Kathy meeting with me yesterday. From a business standpoint, this looks like a very good business deal, and I'd like to make a recommendation that we approve it. We just, and this, all the legal I's are dotted and the T's are crossed from a legal perspective. Then I move that we go ahead with the...
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Second. Motion made and second. Any further discussion? Comments from the staff? Comments from Jim? Anything else to say? Cast your votes, and the agreement's approved. Thank you very much. Leslie, Jim, thank you. Okay. Item B is an item that's more in character of what we've been doing. It's a new customer coming in, creating jobs. The Air Inc., is that what it's called? Air Inc. Is creating 118 new jobs in Oklahoma City, and this is an incentive that we've paid in the past, or similar to some of the incentives we paid in the past. Mike, you have some comments on this?
Michael Ogan with the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber, here to introduce a representative from the firm. We bring forward to you for your consideration a project, an expansion by a local aerospace engineering firm, Air Inc. Engineering Services, and to give you a little bit of background on the company as well as their short-term and longer-term plans. Marvin Banta, who's the company's Director of Business Management, is here.
Thank you, Michael. Would you say your last name again?
Good afternoon. As Michael said, my name is Marvin Bonta. I'm the Director of Business Management with Air Inc. Engineering Services. Our offices here are located, well, we have two locations at 6400 Southeast 59th Street, and then out at the airport at 6015 South Portland. Go ahead and advance. A little bit of background of our company. We were actually a federally funded research corporation established by the federal government back in the late 1920s to manage frequencies for the airlines, and over time privatized and expanded our services into engineering services in general, as well as defense services. And our Oklahoma City operation here is a part of not Air Inc. Incorporated, the parent company, but a subsidiary called Air Inc. Engineering Services, and it's the defense component of Air Inc. Incorporated. Go ahead and move on. This organization chart just quickly shows you where we fall in the overall corporate organization. there are two business units within Air Engineering Services, and the yellow on the right is the Oklahoma City operation. And Oklahoma City is our headquarters for this business unit also. Our mission in life is, while it started out as Defense Services Engineering, we really have changed our business model over the last few years, and we are focusing almost strictly on aircraft modifications. And that started, we do three major business lines. We do complete overhaul and rebuild of aircraft, system modifications, and then we do for unique custom modifications for intelligence-type services for both U.S. agencies and foreign nationality, foreign nations. Next. A little bit about the background, the timeline. We opened our office here in 1992. Late 91, 92 was when we really started hiring employees. And then we made a strategic decision to start to go down this modification path in 03. And then our first hangar was made operational in 2007. We languished for a couple of years. It takes a while to build that business and get your name out and so forth, but we have a robust business line right now, and so much so that we had to expand our facility and capabilities for additional throughput. At that time, we started looking at alternate locations. We actually went to our board, tried to get approval for expansion 4 times and got shot down every time. They kept wanting more information, and we couldn't satisfy them. But after the 4th meeting, we learned of the SIP program from both our developer and then talked with the chamber about it to get some of the basic details. And we then had that as a part of our 5th and final run at the board in October of 2010, in which case they proved us to go forward at that time. We looked at 4 potential locations, Oklahoma City, of course, Burns Flats here in Oklahoma, Ozark, Arkansas, and in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We looked at a number of potential, even an acquisition down in that area to expand. And everything from operations infrastructure to a lease build option versus just leasing when a facility was already built, the availability of the workforce and other intangibles of which this incentive program was a part of it. And then, of course, we made the recommendation to the board that we stay here in Oklahoma City. And in that October, I think it was October 19th, actually, was they finally gave us the go-ahead approval to move forward. And thank God they did, because we just made the critical date. We had a contract in the waiting, and we had to have a location for the first aircraft coming in. So, in fact, even the board expressed some concern that they delayed us a little bit too long, and would we be able to make it. But anyway, for AirInc, we have 1 location worldwide where we do modifications as an AirInc facility, and that's here in Oklahoma City. We do some contracts come out in the federal government, even international, that they want the work done on their Air Force base or something like that, so we have field services where we do that. But where we do it in our facility, this is the single location that we do that at. And right now there's no intent to try and go elsewhere since we made that decision. Thanks. As we look at the application, we're looking at an average of 118 employees. Actually, it's 118 this year. And it ramps up to, I think, one of the years in here about 130. But overall, we maintain pretty steady workforce increase, about 118 employees over a 5-year period. And, it's avionics technicians, sheet metal workers, planners, project managers, engineers. It's a wide spectrum of folks. It's not just the touch labor at the hangar, but the planners and the engineers for the work also. A little bit about an industry pipeline that some of you may or may not know. You probably do it because of the aerospace industry is so big here, and I know it's growing, but it's projected in the integration and modification world for the next 10 years to be $160 billion of work that's coming out, and that's not only U.S. government but international. And we're looking at, and actually the last couple of years have proven that we're looking at a 2% market share of that, which is a $3 billion over that 10-year period. And we are right on pace for that. we're busting at the seams right now, and as you'll see in a couple minutes, we've got plans beyond this. So our future expansion, as I just mentioned, not only we building a second hangar, but we look to build a third hangar, more ramp space, consolidate warehouse and shops and offices and so forth to a larger campus, from 14-acre campus at the airport now out to a 26-acre. And based on my conversation with my boss this morning, it might even be bigger than that. The company board of directors, as of the board meeting on the 19th, when we pitched and got approval for the first hangar, are well aware of the longer-term vision and the role that OKC plays in that, including the incentive package that we hope to get approved for. But one thing I need to stress is that, like anything else, every decision, whether we lease or build and expand, is a case-by-case decision, and it's the business case on, is the work coming down the pipe going to pay for it? We always have to look in comparison of elsewhere, other locations, to prove that. But my confidence level is high, is that it's always going to be OKC. Once you're in for $1, you're in for $100, and so I think we're looking really good here for the future. This plot here is a site plan, just to show you what our site looks like right now. You can see that the white area was the already built portions, and then just the top you see what's labeled as new hangar. That new hangar actually just went operational. We got our temporary certificate of occupancy in the last 7 days. So that's built. Both to the north and the south, we have expansion capacity. That fills up that 26-acre campus. And it's possible it could be bigger even than that, but that's pretty much cast in concrete what we're looking at the pipeline right now, what our needs are going to be. In fact, I'm very close to getting approval on the south to expand our ramp in the very near future and have development start on that as we go forward. So that, as I said, that's just a quick look at what that plot looks like. And if there are any questions I can answer, I'd be glad to.
Any questions? Larry? John? Yes.
2% market share, you can beat that, can't you?
We're right now, we're right on that, but one of the things we found out, if you take a look at it just 18 months ago, the market didn't know of us. Now we got customers calling us and wanting us to get in the ball game for their work. And it very much comes to be, once your name is out there, it's capacity driven. If you have the capacity, you're in the game. And we found that out. The first start out with the first hangar, and we obviously sat with it virtually empty for about 2 years. But once the word got out, everything, and international as well as national, and most of our domestic marketplace is pretty much U.S. government, not just the DoD, but the State Department and Border Protection and those sorts of things too. But yeah, that's a conservative number. I think we're going to do much better as we get the momentum, and everything's based on, not just capacity, performance also. But I personally am very optimistic with our future and the growth here. So.
Any additional questions? Well, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you very much for choosing Oklahoma City. We really appreciate that, and we'll do all we can to make your tenure here as president and fruitful as possible. I'd like to thank the Chamber also for bringing this matter up here, and we need a motion.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Kathy a question on the resolution, on the third whereas, because we have our second whereas. We have a third, excuse me. We have several that fit into this, whereas these jobs reflect an increased business presence. That is compatible with the goal of the GOLP bonds, was not only to attract new businesses in, but also to encourage existing businesses as they expanded in Oklahoma City?
That's correct, yep. And their expansion, as Mr. Bonta mentioned, this one is for 118 jobs. Your minimum threshold was 50 jobs in the policy you adopted. And the recommended SIP offer is about $750,000, and that's what we'll be negotiating with them over the next few weeks.
Now, the reason I asked that question, Mr. Chairman, I was posed with that question of how come we're incentivizing, if you will, existing businesses, but that was part of the original
Right.
program that the voters approved back in 2007.
I think
Thank you.
historically, the majority of the new jobs in Oklahoma City have been created by existing businesses rather than people coming in. So I think it's anything we can do to encourage the development of our people who are here now. I think we're way ahead of the game. So the chair would entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion made and second. Any further discussion, comments, or questions? Cast your votes, and the issue is approved. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Okay, item C on the agenda is a similar process for one of our hometown companies as well, Chesapeake Energy. And
we've already had a presentation from Chesapeake about this application, so this is really the next step in our approval process where the trust authorizes the allocation of the general obligation limited tax bonds. In this case, it's in the amount of $3.5 million to Chesapeake Energy. Their plans are to create 350 jobs with an average salary of $85,000 a year. So this is the kind of the next step in the process. If you have any questions or anything, there is a representative from Chesapeake here to answer those, or I will try to. And then the next item is the agreement with Chesapeake, the economic development agreement for the $3.5 million.
so the related, C and D are related items. Are there any questions on either C or D? Okay, thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to approve item C then.
So moved.
Okay, cast your votes. Item C is approved, and now the chair would entertain a motion to approve item D, unless there are questions or discussion on item D.
No questions, but like to move.
Motion made and second to approve item D. Cast your votes. Item D is approved. Congratulations, Chesapeake. We really appreciate your developing the additional people here. That's great. Okay, item E, the next item on our agenda, is a similar proposition. This is for Blue Cross Blue Shield doing business as the Healthcare Services Corporation, a new incoming marketing facility. They're moving here to Oklahoma City. The staff, or is there a representative here of Blue Cross Blue Shield?
I don't believe there is. Again, this is the next step in the process. You've had a presentation about this expansion. It is 104 jobs over the next 3 years. The average wage is about just under $50,000 a year. And again, this first item allocates the general obligation limited tax bond proceeds in the amount of $420,000. And then the next item is the agreement with Blue Cross Blue Shield.
So item E and F are related like C and D were previously. Okay. Are there any questions or comments? Chair will entertain a motion to approve item 4E. Second. Motion made and second. Further discussion? And the item is approved. Item 4F is a related item. Are there any questions or discussion on item 4F? Chair will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Thank you. This is really hard getting people to make motions up here. Cast your votes, and it's approved. There's no additional liability incurred by approving these things. So it's just, whether you approve it or not, it's still you're liable for it. Item G is an economic development project for some financing for the development of 139 residential apartments in the northern Bricktown area. I understand I see the developer here, so hopefully we'll get some comments, discussion of this project.
This is this is the other part of what the Economic Development Trust does, and this is a tax increment financing project on 4th Street in the Deep Deuce area. Ron Bradshaw and Jason Bradshaw are here to make a brief presentation and show you some renderings of their project.
Hi, I'm Jason Bradshaw. We're here to discuss the Maywood, which is a 139-unit multifamily project, which will be located on the current vacant corner of the southwest vacant corner of 4th and Oklahoma. It's about an acre site. We'll be building a $18 million project, which will consist of 2 levels of below-grade structured parking with 2 4-floor towers that will be built in wood frame on top. The finish will be exclusively brick and stucco. It will fall within the design, the zoning ordinance of the downtown design district. So it will be built out to the property lines on all sides. We are raising $2 million of local equity to finance the project, and are in the final phase of application for a $16 million loan with HUD, which we expect to close last part of September, early part of October. At that time, we would be prepared to commence construction on the project. The rents that we are targeting are $1.20 on average per foot, which translates into $600 to $1,100 a month. This project and other projects that we are working on are going to target the workforce in downtown Oklahoma City. We feel like the upper end of the market is being covered, and so we are trying to get more people living downtown. We think the best way to do that is with rental projects that are targeting the middle part of the market. It's going to be about an 18-month construction process, and we're projecting a 10-month absorption period, and the request is for $1 million TIF.
Good, thank you. Any questions of the Bradshaws? We've got 2 of them here, so we've got to get to at least 2 different answers.
Just a couple of other comments about this agreement. The TIF allocation is for $1 million. And again, this one has been structured as some of the most recent TIF allocation or TIF agreements that we've had, where the TIF funds will not be provided to the developer until after the project is complete, and the county assessor verifies that a market value of at least $15 million has been created. So, and there is a clause that the project can't be flipped or sold for so many years. So
we'll hold it for 5 years.
For 5 years.
And I think we have to be 40% leased before we can apply for the funds as well.
Right. So all of those kinds of requirements are a part of this agreement, like some of the ones we've most recently done.
And I wanted to point out, too, a recent kind of small amendment to the agreement was to allow them to assign this contract to a corporation that includes all their partners, their business partners.
It's not a new group. It's an existing group. It's just...
The initial application was made by the general partner of the partnership, and since the original application, we formed the partnership and funded it, and so the assignment would be to the partnership.
Any questions or comments? Larry?
So just to refresh my mind, so should the project not be completed or not have 40% leasing, none of the TIF money will be expended, in effect? Until they meet the criteria. Thank you.
And there's a further restriction there in terms of the value of the property. It has to have a certain amount of tax value before they get the money. So it was I thought, in our favor anyway, at least a well-drawn agreement. So, any other questions or comments? Londa? Staff? Anything else? Good. Well, thank you very much. Good luck on your project. Exciting to watch. The chair would need would entertain a motion to approve the agreement. Motion made and second. Very good. Thank you. Any further discussion? Cast your votes, and the agreement is approved. Thank you. Item H is a change order, and we've had a couple of these come through as Project 180 continues to develop downtown, and the Myriad Gardens project develops. And this first one is associated with, I think they're both associated with Myriad Gardens. On item H, it's a $85,000 roughly change order. Are there any questions or comments regarding the change order? We have experts here to address those issues if we need it. Staff, any comments? Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion made and second to approve. Cast your votes. And the item is approved. Thank you. The next item, item I, is a similar thing. It's a change order, this time for around $34,000. Are there any comments or questions? Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
A motion made and second. Cast your votes. And the item is approved. Thank you very much. Item J is a report. And this is the report from the Business Initiative for the fiscal year for I2E. Rex, I think you're going to make the report.
Good afternoon. I'm Rex Smitherman. I'm Vice President of Operations for I2E, Inc. here in Oklahoma City. And I'm here today to give the Trust an update on the first year of operations of the Oklahoma City Technology Business Launch Initiative. And I've got quite a few slides. I'll go through the first ones fairly quickly and concentrate on the latter part of the presentation. We're very pleased. I would like to start out by saying very pleased with the accomplishments of the year, where we were. If you remember, this began July 1 of 2010, and we had about a 4 to 6 month ramp-up period, and so the activities and outcomes that you see on this report are primarily in the last 6 months of the fiscal year. This information that we're sharing went to the Federal Economic Development Administration this morning, and then two of the rest of our partners after this presentation. We'll send a report out to all the partners. Just to refresh your memory, the initiative is a multi-service approach to creating and growing new startup technology-based businesses in Oklahoma City area. And the programs that you can see listed there, item number 6 was a build-out of our facility here in Oklahoma City, which was finished in January of this year and financed by the Presbyterian Health Foundation. It's a wonderful facility. If you ever get a chance, you need to go by and see it. There's 5 areas that I'd like to cover very quickly, and each one of them we talk about what the services are that the initiative has rolled out in the last year, and then what we did in the fourth quarter. And at the end of the presentation, we'll talk about the year end. The first piece of this initiative, you'll recall, is bringing in national experts to help our local startup companies. And we bring these entrepreneurs, and they come in and provide mentoring, training, workshops, and consulting to our CEOs in the Oklahoma City area. And during the fourth quarter, we had one of those events, gentleman talking about how to build management teams, which is probably the second most important thing to a company other than getting money to start up. And then we had 9 Oklahoma City companies that participated in that particular session. And then one of those companies had some after hours, or later on had some one-on-one time with this individual to help them with a particular problem that they were experiencing. The next piece of the services is the executive in residence services. This one really is probably the most successful service of all the things we've done over the last year. We really hit on a home run on this deal. We have contracted with a company out in Norman called Initial Call. And I've spoken about them before, but just have had wonderful success with this organization. They come into these companies, and they are the sales executive for these companies. They help them to evaluate their sales processes, their protocols, their scripts that they use, all set up their sales system and their databases. But more importantly, for I2E and for the city and all of our partners, they will go in and they will evaluate the market. They make calls to potential customers to find out, is this really something that's needed? Is this a product or a service that there is a market for, and it's not just the entrepreneur's vision, but there's a real potential? And they do a lot of that due diligence work on behalf of I2E and the client, for that matter. And it has been a wonderful thing for these companies. In fact, it's not I wouldn't know I call it a positive outcome, but one of the outcomes was a company looked at their business model and their pricing structures on their product and decided not to go forward. which cut a lot of losses that might have gone on had we not had that advice early. The company is reevaluating its market strategies because of that, and we think they will be successful, but it'll take them a little longer. During the quarter, initial call did, as you can see, 132 customer calls to verify markets on 9 clients, developed a playbook, did market analysis, and did some one-on-one sales consulting for those 9 companies. And one of the things that falls under this particular service is our CFO in residence. If you'll remember last quarter, I came to you and said that we were still trying to find that individual, and it's been a very difficult hire. We finally did hire somebody, and she will start next Monday. So the second year of this initiative will be fully loaded with our executives in residence.
Excuse me, Rhonda had a question.
What's a sales playbook?
It's a combination of all the things that I was remarking. It outlines the structure of the sales department. It talks about what their protocols are. It talks about scripts. They actually write scripts for the sales staff to use when making sales calls. And it's very organized reporting, data collection, all of those things. It's really very well done. The next piece is the Seed Step Angels expansion. This was to grow and enhance the angel group here in Oklahoma City to provide support for these companies as they're starting up. In the fourth quarter, the group looked at 7 different investment opportunities. Of those 7, 4 were invited to come and make presentations to the angel group. And of those 4, 1 closed an investment and 3 are in due diligence right now. Over the year, and you'll see this later in the presentation, the group, we had about 30 members this time last year. It is now down to 23. We're not very worried about that because what's happened is it's the right 23. We had a lot of tire kickers early that people were interested, didn't know if this is something they wanted to do, have since decided didn't fit them, but the guys and the ladies and gentlemen that are still in this group are very committed and are very engaged and interested in becoming mentors to some of these startup companies. And we're going to continue to grow the group, but we have a really good core group now. The next piece is the I2E Fellows. This is our fellowship program for college students in the area. We hosted 2 fellows in I2E's offices this summer, and also we had some in the spring, and we placed 5 students with 4 of our companies, and they got to spend the summer with these startup companies. And it's been a wonderful opportunity. We had 3 of those students are international students who are planning on staying in Oklahoma City. So we're pleased about that. This has been very successful. The last piece here, the targeted networking events, I do want to mention that these kinds of things are really good for our entrepreneurs because they get to meet investors, they get to meet service providers, and they get to meet other CEOs and other companies that help them with their concerns, issues that they have with their own companies. And these events have been very, very well received. We do a lot of best practice teaching for our angels, best practices for our entrepreneurs. And of note here, we did finally get our person to help us with all of our web design and other media work for the initiative. The next slide is a summary of FY11's activities. Just to give you a sense of what we did over the year, and I don't like to harp on this too much, but the first 4 to 6 months of this initiative, we're really trying to get people on board, get this thing ramped up, and get it moving. So what you see here is probably a 6 to 8 month activities. 30 different companies in Oklahoma City. received 70 unique or distinct services out of this initiative. 3 of those 30 company CEOs actually went on to have some one-on-one time with these entrepreneurs and residents who come in from all over the country and to handle a particular problem that they are having. Our Seed Step Angel Group screened 23 different investment opportunities, had 10 of those presented to the group, and made 2 investments. We had 9 students that worked with us this year, and we did 12 different training and networking events for our CEOs and angels. The next slides, 2 slides, are the ones that I think are really what we're here today to review, and that is what are the impacts on Oklahoma City and the area. As I said before, 30 companies received 1 or more services from the initiative. Of those 30, 17 we have year-over-year data on comparing the data from a year ago to the end of this year. 13, we do not have that year-over-year. 10 of those are because they were new companies and were not here last year. And then 3 of those companies did not fill out the data, the survey data that we asked, and we're going to fix that. Our engagement letter that we have the company sign when we work with them now has a clause in it that to get the services, to have opportunity for funding, they have to fill out this information. The next slide is the slide that I think tells the story. In the 6 to 8, or this year, these companies that we have the data on created 43 new jobs in Oklahoma City, have annual revenues of $6 million, total annual payroll of $5.6 million. The average wage for these employees is $63,000. And these companies also went out and leveraged an additional $4 million in capital investment in the last 12 months. And you have to remember, these are startup companies. Some of them only have 1 or 2 employees, and so those numbers are we think fairly good for this first ramp-up year. Just some other interesting information that's not on the slide, that $6 million that you see in annual revenues, that's new revenues of $3.8 million during the year. So they've added $3.8 million in revenue just in the last 12 months. On the payroll, that's $2.7 million new dollars of payroll in the last 12 months, and that's not on the slide, but it shows that they are increasing from where they were a year ago. Finally, just so you'll know where we're headed, we did hire our CFO in residence. She starts Monday. We are already planned out our entrepreneur in residence programs for the balance of fiscal 12, which takes us through June of next year. One of the things that we've learned, and I think it's important for the trust to see, is that all of these sales services that we've been providing, we've decided that this needs to be brought in-house, some of it. We've been contracting out with this organization, and we think that this ought to become a staple of what I2E does, not only for our companies in Oklahoma City, but we think this is such a neat deal that we want to offer it to all of our clients. So we're going to do some things internally to do this with all of our clients. That's important because that was kind of a goal of this initiative. It's a pilot. What works, what doesn't work. This works. And it's going to help not just Oklahoma City, but the surrounding communities and all of the state because of what we learned in this pilot. And we're going to work on that in the coming years. We're also going to continue our work with the local universities. We're going to try to work where we have a standing fellowship opportunity for all the local institutions, OCU, OU, OSU. Who else, Casey? Well, we have some. We had a student that lived in Oklahoma City from TU, worked for one of our Oklahoma City companies. So it works. That's the end of my presentation, except for our partners slide. I'd like to remind everybody who the partners are in this 3-year pilot project, and also publicly thank the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust and the EDA for their support of this, and we think next year will be even better. So any questions you might have?
Other questions of Rex? Great, thank you very much. Rex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The next item on our agenda is the general manager's reports. Are there any questions or comments on the report? I really like the summary of the jobs that have been created and paid for. I think that's very good. Looking forward to seeing our new participants on there quickly.
Yeah, and I was going to say, we have the summary of some of the projects we've been working on, so that you can kind of see the status report on those, which is the new addition to our report. So I think that's pretty helpful. Helps us keep track of things. So.
Any other questions on the report? I had just a quick question. I was asked this question because I was with the city. I didn't really know what the answer is. On La Rosa, which is one of our residential development projects, was financed to some extent by TIF. And the first phase, I understand, been completed, and there's a second phase that still was planned, and it's on sort of on hold now. The question was, is there any TIF money available to support that second phase operation?
There were TIF funds allocated for that second phase, but I think we would have to see dramatic improvements in the assessed values created by the first phase before we would be willing to move on to the second. We haven't quite achieved the kind of assessed values that we anticipated, so I think we'd have to look at that pretty carefully.
The answer is yes, theoretically, but.
Yes, in theory, but, yeah.
Very good. I give those answers all the time.
On page 2, Kathy, of your report, in the comments to an earlier question I had, you made the statement that we had a 50-job minimum to be eligible for the GOLP bonds, and on pre-dent we have number of jobs 15.
Yeah, pre-dent was one of the emerging technology forgivable loans, so it isn't part of the standard program.
Are there any questions? Thank you for the report. It's a very good report. Are there any comments from the staff? Comments from the trustees? Comments from the public? We do appreciate the Chamber's efforts in this area. We're a great team. You find them, we pay them. That's good. Okay, and Rod, good luck on your project. Thank you all. Anybody else make a comment? Questions? We are adjourned.